You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network.
Did you have something specific in mind?
For a pre-roll thing?
Yeah.
We could talk about the Deadpool Celine Dion music video.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. That's it. We could just talk about Deadpool being awesome.
I think that's the best part of it, is that is it.
Yeah. Like
that's
just, it's a video.
It's just a music video. And, like, there's a little bit of a funny part at the end where he's like, that was really good. That's an 11. I need you to bring it down to, like, a 5.5. Yeah. And then she's like, I don't do anything less than 11 or something. And it's like, okay, like, that's... But the rest of it, it's like, it's literally just a music video and with some clips from the movie and then a dancer in a Deadpool costume.
It is just, like, Celine Dion. It's a Celine Dion music video. Yeah. Like... That's the coolest thing about it, is that, like...
The thing about Deadpool, the way that Ryan Reynolds has, like, sort of embodied the character and made it real, is that, like, none of it is half-ass.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the movies themselves are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even seen the second one, but I can already tell you
it's going to be fun.
Great.
Yep.
And the first one is, like, impeccable.
I actually should rewatch it. I haven't watched it in a while.
I haven't watched it since it came to Netflix.
Oh, it's on Netflix?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it was.
I might make my mom watch it for Mother's Day when she's down. I made her watch Doctor Strange and Thor last time.
As long as you're okay with watching a scene with some there's some raunchier stuff.
There is.
And there's like the 5-minute sex scene of them, like, through the months.
Yeah, but that's a funny
holiday.
sex montage.
It's funny, but there is a moment where he's like, nope, nope.
Yep.
Nope,
yeah, I do.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, if you're comfortable watching that with your mom, I would not be comfortable watching that with my parents.
I don't know. I'll check. The thing is, I have a different relationship with my mom than I do with my dad. Uh-huh. So I would totally not watch it with my dad.
Yes.
But I might watch it with my mom.
Okay.
Like, I would just be like, yo, mom.
Heads up.
Heads up.
Heads up.
But we'll see.
I don't know. I would be worried about about questions coming up from a parent. Or, you know what's would be even scarier? No questions. Silence. Just like,
Yep.
It's like, oh, well, all right
no.
then. Yeah, that would be even more uncomfortable. But I don't know. That's a weird thing. It's like I feel like we're gonna go into a weird place now. I feel like because we've grown up, and we didn't grow up with the internet. We grew up as the internet became a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So the generation after us is even worse off, better off. I don't know. But we came of age in an era where anything and everything was accessible.
Right, yeah.
So in a Deadpool movie, a scene like that is just like, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just funny, right?
Yeah.
But I think to our parents' generation, certainly to the generation before them, I'd say with our parents' generation, it's like a 50-50 split.
Yeah, because they had to work hard, but they could still find it. For our parents' generation, I feel like
they
had to work. They had to want it. They had to want. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, like, for myself personally, it's impossible to avoid stuff. You go on Tumblr and you're just following a regular person that's just into Star Wars, you think.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're scrolling through your feed and there's just something excessive. And you're like, oh, well, all right. I think I'm going to unfollow this person because I can't trust this at, like,
Oh, no,
like
really?
this at work, right?
Oh, yeah, because you're like, like the NSFW stuff, yeah.
So, like our parents didn't have an NSFW situation.
Right.
They just, they knew that this magazine was for private time only. These video cassettes were, that you didn't really bring your video cassettes to work.
Yeah.
But now we have all that stuff on our phones and on our computers.
Yeah,
and
so it's just
so
like
easy to just like
everywhere.
Yeah. I can't imagine. Well, I guess we can imagine it because we live in that world where, like, I think that's what all of the, like, outrage from that generation, from, like, the baby boomers and Gen Xers, is, like, they didn't grow up with this stuff, so they are offended on our behalf.
Oh, right, because they're like,
like, it's what you do in your private time, as long as it's consensual and nobody's getting hurt, whatever, who cares, right? And that's our attitude, and the generation after us is even more so like
whatever.
Like they wear some of that stuff on their sleeve. Like you go into a Hot Topic, and some of the things that you can purchase in Hot Topic, it's like, this is straight up like kink and fetish stuff in a Hot Topic.
Yeah, it's
for
just
sale
pop culture
to 15-year-olds.
Yeah,
right, and it's like you can even hear it in my voice where I'm like, this crosses the line for me personally.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of let go of it and be like, I guess that if that's where we are as a society and people are okay with it, then I guess it's okay.
So there's something that I'm like grappling with a little bit, just like with you saying that and like thinking about regression. And when I talk to people who are my age who are now teachers, and the idea of like what we were experiencing in high school or elementary school is just so radically different now that like the thing they're worried about is not people like just having sex, but it's like putting themselves on the internet having sex. Yeah. Like it's not the conversation that we think would be happening. It's so far beyond that like you have to accept certain levels of like, but then I think back like through, and it's this is always my thing with the idea with people being mad at people taking selfies. Yeah. I have a problem with that because I'm like, if selfies were possible 300 years ago, everybody would be taking selfies as well. Yeah. So it's just this idea that I don't think anything in our culture has changed. It's just the access to see other people doing it that has changed.
So like there's a democratization to it.
Yeah.
Technology does that. So like what you're saying is 300 years ago, if they had access to the technology, they would have taken selfies. Well, the only people who got to take selfies were super rich people who could hire a portrait artist to paint a portrait of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Other than that, it's like you just had to remember what people looked like. Maybe you could write it down, but you probably couldn't even read. So, like, it is definitely...
so it's like...
I don't know, like it is a net positive. That's what people need to remember is that you know, the sexual freedom comes at a couple of different prices, and one of those is that if sex is more free, then it's more accessible and it's going to be more public. Yeah. Right? Like that's just kind of the way that it goes. So and we're so inundated with sexual imagery on a day-to-day basis in advertising and on television and online that the generation coming after us is just completely desensitized to it. Yeah. So it is an interesting challenge because I think that we're in Canada, and I think in Canada, or at least in Vancouver, on the West Coast, maybe even in Penticton where we both went. You grew up and I went to high school. I think that we're a little bit more progressively minded here. I think that some of the provinces in the interior, like in the middle of the country,
are a little less.
The interior of like the as they call them, the flyover states, the Midwest, and that sort of thing. In the United States, I think that they are much more abstinence-based education, which scientifically does not work. It causes more problems than it solves. But I don't know. I think that it's just really important because we are so inundated with it and because it is so accessible. It is more important than it was even for our generation that we have healthy, open dialogue about stuff like this. Even to the point that like we're talking about this on a podcast.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
When I started 10 years ago, I never would have imagined having a conversation about sex openly on a podcast.
Really?
Especially when part of the topic is like it came up because of like a BDSM topic, right? From Deadpool. So it's like
from a popular movie in like pop culture, right?
That lots of people
which is
seen.
Just
So you know what's so funny about that is when the movie came out, I was asked by a friend of mine who's a parent. She's a little bit older, and her kid's he was about 16, I think, 15 or 16 when Deadpool came out, and he really wanted to go see it. And she asked me because I had already seen it, is it appropriate? Is it okay? I was like, well, it's very violent, but I don't think that that's really an issue. It's no more violent than any of the other Marvel movies. I don't think it's a little. It's a little bit more gruesome, but it's less gruesome than a Friday the 13th type.
Yeah. Like it's not
his
horror.
hand gets cut off and then it grows back a little weird.
Yeah, because when you add comedy into stuff, it sort of like alleviates some of the grossness.
But one of the things that I did say is like, but there are a couple of like sexual scenes, and that's the thing that people get hung up on still, and I think that that's interesting. So
there's a difference in rating systems between the States and Canada, specifically when it comes to what elicits an R rating. And the thing that I always get just fascinated by, and I believe that this is the thing, is that America, you can have way more violence in your films and not hit an R rating than you can in Canada, because we think of violence as or our rating systems or whatever it is, it puts violence on a higher scale. Whereas in the States, it's the same with sex. You can't have as much sex in movies in the States, and you can have a lot more explicitly sexual scenes in movies in Canada without getting an R rating. And I just think that that's a really interesting valuation on sex and violence, because those are two things that were like, at what level is it okay for people at certain ages to experience things? And there is a very quantifiable difference between Canada and America. Even these like really similar like movies that come like both like it, and I'm curious, I don't know the statistics in Europe. I would lean towards, I think Canada gets a lot of its stuff about media from Europe, and I feel like we follow more European standards, where I mean sex is not even a thing in European countries. Like, you talk about sex so openly in many European countries that I feel like it's probably quite similar, right, in terms of like how you rate stuff. But it's like healthy conversations about sexual and like there's sexual violence is a completely different thing, obviously, than what we're talking about. But those two categories on their own, sex and violence, and how they get rated, I think it's just a really interesting cultural dissection for how we treat each other in everyday life and like how our kids are raised. So it's just it's just fascinating to me. Yeah, it is a really interesting dichotomy, and the idea that violence is somehow more permissible, characters getting eviscerated or cut limb from limb and decapitated and stuff like that, is somehow less offensive than consensual sex. Right? Because in Deadpool, that's what it is. It's all consensual, and that I would say that more than, obviously, if you have more than one F-bomb in your movie, you're automatically an R. Like like a PG-13 movie gets one F, and then after that you're automatically an R. So it's like X-Men First Class is always the prime example of that. You want to stay PG-13 because you want to stay to as wide an audience as possible, but they use their one F-bomb perfectly
Because it's in the scene when they're recruiting.
Oh, and Wolverine.
And they both walk up to Wolverine
yes.
and he says, "Go F yourself." and they just turn around and walk away.
Good.
And it's like, it's Hugh Jackman's only scene in the movie, and it's so perfect. And it's a perfect example of like, that's how you use your one F-bomb.
Yeah, it's just for like something like that.
You gotta clear the theater with it if you're gonna drop it.
And so I did just want to sort of say, like, I feel like we have slightly different rating systems too in Canada in terms of
we do.
We have 14A and 18A and then R. And like, it takes a lot, I think, to get an R rating in Canada.
Yes.
Like, it's not the same as the States. The States is easier to get an R rating.
And the difference between an R and an 18A in Canada is that an 18A, anybody can go to an 18A film, but if you are under 18, you have to be accompanied by an adult.
Right. And then somebody if you're in R, you have to be 18 or older.
If it's an R, you must be 18 or older. And then it starts getting into the next rating.
So I feel like Deadpool was 18A then. Because I don't think it was R-rated in Canada.
Yes, it would have been 18.
Yeah, because you were allowed to go if you were under that. And that is the difference, really, is that it's explicit violence, frequent coarse language, sexual activity, and horror. So horror movies are often 18A in Canada. And then R is that it's frequent sexual activity, brutal or graphic, violent, intense horror, and disturbing content. Yeah. So it's just like different.
So you're talking about getting into something like a Saw or...
Yeah, like stuff like that would be...
Is
going to be R as opposed to... Yeah. And so it's just... Oh, it's interesting. I think that the MPA is a different thing for... Anyways. Oh, yeah. Interesting, yeah. 18, they have, like, similar things in whatchamacallit, the
There's
UK.
NC-17, isn't it?
I think NC-17 is US stuff.
Yeah.
NC-17 is no one 17 and under admitted, is their version of the R, is NC-17.
Yeah.
And so R is under 17 requires accompanying parent or adult or guardian. Yeah. So it's different, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, like, And I do think that you nailed it. The American sensibility comes very much out of that puritanical
history,
English,
like
mentality, that sort of a mind frame. Whereas I think that because Canada from the outset is a British colony as well as
French.
heavily French.
It's the French influence.
In its inception. I think you're right. It's absolutely the French influence. So, I mean, like, I'm making a joke when I say this, so nobody get too offended. But that's probably like the only positive contribution that Quebec has made to Canada.
Oh, come on. That is rude. That
right,
is so
right.
not
Bon
true.
Cop, Bad Cop is apparently a good movie.
I love Bon Cop. Have you not seen Bon Cop, Bad Cop? Oh, it's totally worth watching. I haven't watched the second one yet, but yeah, it's a really legitimately funny movie, and it's well done. Apparently, so if we're talking about this, I haven't dug into this deep, but apparently in France, 50 Shades of Grey got a PG-12 rating.
Because in France they're like, oh,
I don't know. I haven't read this. This looks like it's just an article that somebody wrote about something, so I don't know. I haven't actually like looked into it. Yeah. But it's just different. They have a different like system for grading stuff.
They're probably sitting in the movie theater at 12 years old, sipping on a glass of wine,
and just sort of
right?
And it's the idea that like
totally
the thing too for me is that like having watched 50 Shades of Grey many times is that like it is not explicit sexual violence or like it's fine. Like it's not gonna like scar children really because the state of masochism or whatever it is that they call it that they use is not actually properly done. Like it's not. There's nothing in 50 Shades of Grey. It's very tame. Like it's not
a Walmart version
of like it's not. So it's like in terms of like the things that you would be upset about in a movie or something. I could see it. Anyways, I'm gonna look into this more because I'm seeing now a couple articles where it's like when you Google movie rating systems, there's like multiple articles that show up on the first page that are like 50 Shades of Grey is only for 12. It was like 12 PG-12. Anyways, it proves a part of the point.
I would sooner stop my child from watching 50 Shades of Grey because it's just not good storytelling than any of the sexual content. It's like, look, this is...
Have you seen 50 Shades of Grey?
No, have you seen it, Crystal? It's but in its inception, it is just it's Twilight fan fiction minus the copyright content.
Okay, you remember who you're talking to when it comes to conversations like this. I have very specific information and opinions on what is or is not good content.
Yes, you have bad taste. That's correct.
It's also tough to have taste when
if you're gonna talk, come closer to the microphone, first of all. Not from across the room.
Hi, Crystal.
And also, not in the hallway when the kid is sleeping down the hall. We're not shouting across a house.
Yeah, but I can still hear you in the other corner.
But there's a difference between projecting that loud.
Hello.
Do you have something that you'd like to add?
No.
No, you were. Feel like you were gonna defend me. I feel like you should speak up.
Oh, I just think that before you have an opinion on a movie or why somebody shouldn't watch it,
You should watch it.
that you should have seen it.
Nope.
That's my opinion as well.
That's not necessarily a valid argument.
Well, I support you, Crystal,
That's
because
not.
I think that that's true.
I mean, I think there's movies that you know you're not going to like because of certain things, but you can't say that it's bad because of a particular element of it when you haven't seen it, because
Yes,
you don't know that the storytelling is bad in that movie.
Subjectively, you can say whatever you want, but from an academic perspective, it's just bad.
You haven't done
It's just bad research. Exactly.
They make these
Science.
things. No, they make these things for movies. They call them trailers, and what they are is they're segments of the film.
Oh, come on. You can't tell me that you don't love the 50 Shades of Grey trailer. That is a sexy trailer with Beyonce's song. The moment I heard that trailer, I listened to that song, that version of the song, like all the time.
I don't find her attractive at all.
Yeah, okay,
so
well.
it like
You're wrong.
it doesn't do anything for me.
Fair.
Well, that's a purely subjective thing. But that's not what the issue
No,
is.
that's not.
But that's not what the issue is. The issue with that movie is absolutely the storytelling and the exploitative nature of it.
So
I
that-
don't have to
okay.
see the movie to know that that's a bad thing.
And I'm not defending 50 Shades of Grey because I haven't seen it, and I don't know. It's not my type of thing, I don't think. But you can't know from a trailer. There's plenty of trailers that I've seen that are not the movie.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right, but there are also plenty of trailers that are the movie. I think that the consensus on 50 Shades of Grey is that the trailer is actually better than the movie.
I've talked to you before about like my stuff about 50 Shades of Grey and why I defend it as a concept of a story. It's not good storytelling, but it's not because the content is to be poo-pooed at. Like it is like this dude is like, the second book is all about him being super messed up and like child abuse and like all sorts of stuff that they have to deal with. So the book is about this like relationship between these two people and like realizing and like breaking down the idea that like he's sort of messed up, and it's like, why are you messed up? Oh, you were like abused as a child and like sexually abused and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. So it's like, let's deconstruct that a little bit and see why you have these impulses. And she's like a pretty like, she said like the end of the movie, for all whatever it is for 50 Shades of Grey, because they knew they were getting a sequel or whatever, it ends with her leaving. Like it's not like it's a romantic story. It's just sort of fun drivel, but she holds her own. Like it's like in terms of like a female character, she's kind of like, I would really like to have sex with you, and he's like, well, I am kinky, so I'd like to only have sex this way. And she's like, but like, okay, I kind of want to like have sex with you anyways, so like I'll try it. And he's like, well, no, because I'm too twisted and I love you and I don't want to put you through that. And it's this whole thing where he then like she like doesn't ever feel like good enough for him because he's like messed up, and it's true, he's messed up. Anyways, but then she leaves in the end because she's like, I can't be what you want me to be, I'm gonna leave. It's actually quite a healthy like dissection of like messed up relationships and like how you deal with that. So
but it's also a poor representation of a community of people, because it implies that sexual abuse leads to that type of proclivity, right? And that's not necessarily true.
That's totally a terrible. Yeah, that's a terrible thing when
and
that's
why that community specifically doesn't like the books or the movies. right? Like, if you go on Tumblr, you
Yeah.
can see all sorts of articles about this, people voicing their opinions, and that's why they don't like it.
Okay, but in the movie, it is put out there that, like, he is not actually I don't know the proper terminology, and I'm gonna but people that do BDSM, there's like proper terminology and all this sort of stuff, and there's like a shift in the movie where he totally like realizes, I think, is it in the first one or is it in the second one? I think it's in the second one, where he just like breaks down and he's like, I'm not this, I'm pretending. So it's like the idea that like it's acknowledged in the movie that he is not actually like the proper terminology for like BDSM. He's hiding behind it because of psychological issues. So like it does point out that there are like things that are like, there's stuff in communities that are like, I don't know. So it's, yes, I get the representation and that it's always bad when, you know, you make villains have disabilities or you make, right? Like I get it from that standpoint, but people often fall on that to like not have to actually engage with what they call mindless drivel. And instead it's just easier for them to go by what culture says or the grander, broader community says is, well, that's a feminine based film for women and I'm going to disregard it out of hand. That's how I see all the conversations about 50 Shades of Grey, is because it's not a film that's considered like highbrow or engaging, and it was written by a woman who was just writing sexy fan fiction of vampires that were also not taken seriously. The film itself is not taken seriously, and I just think that's I think it deserves a little bit more engagement than just being sort of shunned out of hand by people that think that they know what the film is. So that's why I talk about 50 Shades of Grey whenever I can.
I don't know anything about
Yeah, I know. Whatever.
I know I'm never going to watch it.
Yeah,
And
that's fine. You're missing out. It's fun.
I feel like I should watch it now, though. I feel like you've convinced me that I should at least
Again, it's like...
But,
to maybe avoid studying.
Yeah.
but Amanda made not these same arguments, but similar arguments about Twilight, which is the source material that 50 Shades of Grey fanfiction
is basically
I fell asleep during every one of those.
And exactly. Like, we didn't even get through. Like, I watched the first Twilight from start to finish and was not happy that I went
I can't rewatch the original Twilight. Hey, like I put it on sometimes to go watch it because it's an indie film. It's not what the rest of the Twilight franchise is, and it's more my personal relationship with Catherine Hardwicke as a director. She's very good at specific things. I don't think that film was necessarily something that she was like her skills highlighted well, but there's some great moments. You can't argue that the dad is not fantastic. Like
Who plays the dad again?
Oh, I don't know. I want to say Billy Burke. I'm not sure, but he is a gem and such great casting. So he's like the shining star of that.
Peter Facinelli's in it.
Yes.
And that was the thing that I went, okay, I'll give this a chance.
Yeah.
Because I love Peter Facinelli.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
But again,
but
it's not like high art. It's not good.
No,
it's not. But
close.
the whole thing, the
vampires.
arguments that I've made again and time again about these movies is that when you reach the absolute last movie and you get to Bella being this like whiny character and she's been very helpless the whole movie, she literally saves everybody by loving more than anybody else. And that is just like a great representation of like femininity and strength. And for all the problems that it has, I still think that that's something worth celebrating. It's not entertaining to watch because you're like, well, that was boring. But it's a cool dissection of like what it means to be a woman in modern society. So I don't know. I love that Deadpool brought us here. Can I just say how excited I am?
That we started.
I have not enjoyed one of these conversations as much in a really long time.
Well, I'm glad that you did.
Anyways, I kind of killed it because I just won't stop talking. But I like it.
No, that's okay.
I'm good. I'm glad with that. It works.
Crystal's just hovering next to me.
I'm hungry.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we'll wrap up so Crystal can have some food. This is good.
That's why I'm here. I'm just waiting for...
If one of you stops talking for more than half a second,
You'll wrap us
I'll
up.
cut the episode.
Okay.
And it'll be
Excellent.
done.